Why is it so hard to make a good Fantastic Four film? Fantastic Four is the first team and family in the Marvel Comics, and they've had years of incredible stories from some of the greatest writers and artists ever. And then there's the films, and stay away from my child. Why has it been so hard for them to be able to adapt these characters into movies that are genuinely good? Because if we put aside our nostalgia goggles for those original two films, remember, I do love bad 2000s movies and I like that original Tim Story film, the franchise still has kind of gone 1 for 4 for making a genuinely good Fantastic Four film. But why is that? Why has Spider-Man gotten so many good films? Why have the X-Men gotten good films? Why have the Avengers and even Ant-Man gotten a good film, but the Fantastic Four barely seem to be able to get one? So, let's look at the first reason why it's so hard to make a good Fantastic Four film. First off, the narrative and tone of Fantastic Four is different than any other superhero team. The Fantastic Four are first and foremost scientists and explorers. Those original superhero films that I mentioned are closer to the action genre, while the Fantastic Four lean way more towards sci-fi, more like Star Trek, where they're going off to explore places rather than actually fight people. So when you have characters that in their core from the comics have such a different type of story and narrative that they're usually on, it means the tone and style of the films is going to have to be different than any other type of superhero film. Because if you take the formula of Spider-Man or X-Men and then just try to cram the Fantastic Four into it, they're going to come off as bland and not interesting characters because you're not playing to their strings. And shocker, look what happened. These aren't characters that are meant to be sick or super cool heroes throwing out quips, and they come off as lame and kind of disingenuous when they actually try to do that. Instead, these stories usually have a really sweet tone at the center of them, like Superman. These stories are about a family coming together trying to make the world a better place. So yeah, it usually doesn't work when you're trying to change the tone of it. And that's why the first Fantastic Four films run into this problem, that they're scared to make the team too sincere. They're scared to treat this team like a family. They'd rather this team just be a team like the X-Men. And that destroys the tone and identity of the characters and the story. What makes the Fantastic Four unique is that they are a team that works together so well because they know each other because they're family. So when you destroy that point, you kind of destroy the point of making a Fantastic Four film and why you love these characters. And that kind of leads us into our second reason why it's so hard to make a Fantastic Four film. Look at how hard it is for the first 3 Fantastic Four films to adapt these characters. So let's take one Fantastic Four member for example, Johnny Storm. In the comics, he's Sue's younger brother, a funny little silly guy, but he's actually pretty smart and actually pretty caring. He can be a douche sometimes, but that's not his overall personality, and he's honestly a character that's willing to sacrifice himself in order to make the world a better place. So, how do we adapt him in this family dynamic in the first film? Well, he's kind of a douchebag that kind of has to be forced to be into the team, kind of is a jerk most of the time. What about in the second one? Michael B. Jordan is Johnny Storm. How does he do? Once again, he's kind of a jerk. He calls the thing nobody wants to look at. What are we doing? This isn't Johnny. He's not nice at all. And then let's look at Fantastic Four First Steps, played by Joseph Quinn. Out of all of these castings, I think Joseph Quinn was probably the worst one when I first heard about him. But what does he play? He plays a funny Johnny Storm that's flirty and cocky, but also he cares about his family deeply. He's constantly ready to sacrifice himself, and it's clear that he loves his family more than himself. You see how that little change, giving him a little bit of responsibility and intelligence, completely changes his character? That is why those first 3 films failed. All 4 of these characters are intelligent. They usually only make Reed the intelligent one. Sue is kind of the hot one that Reed likes, Johnny's the funny douchebag, and Ben's the idiot. But that's not what makes these characters interesting. They're all intelligent superheroes that love each other and choose to stay close as a family, and that's where they're their strongest at. Their family dynamic is the most interesting part of the Fantastic Four that no one ever likes to adapt. And when you fail to adapt that part of them, you fail to adapt the third reason why most of these movies fail. Let's just do a little example. Here are 3 Fantastic Four villains and tell me what they got in common. Mole Man, Galactus, and Doctor Doom. What are the 3 things these characters have in common? I'll give you a second. They're lonely. When you are trying to adapt a Fantastic Four film, you need someone for the Fantastic Four to go against. But most of the Fantastic Four villains are built around their heroes. They are singular, lonely characters that are constantly opposed to the family dynamic of the Fantastic Four. So when you don't have a strong family dynamic with these characters, the villains aren't able to be as interesting as well, because the villain is only as interesting as the hero and vice versa. And that applies to the most famous Fantastic Four villain, and honestly, the most famous villain in Marvel, Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom before Fantastic First Steps had been in every single Fantastic Four film, yet no one remembers him. Why? Why do we forget about one of the most iconic villains ever? And it's because he wasn't adapted that well. All of these films have been scared to actually adapt his character. In the comics, Doctor Doom is the other side to Reed Richards' coin. He is a villain that Reed caused, and because of that, his vendetta against the Fantastic Four is extremely personal and full of hatred because he views Reed as a better version of himself and has everything that he wants. Doctor Doom is a lonely loser in the middle of a country with no one that cares about him. He's surrounded by a robot army. He has everything you would want, yet why is he so lonely? That is why he is interesting. He's the exact opposite of what Reed is. So when you're adapting him into the films and you have him as either a test experiment or just a tech bro that's honestly copying the same arc that Green Goblin had in Spider-Man, you lose all the intrigue of the character. He's not a CEO that just becomes Doctor Doom. He has to be connected to Reed. If not, we've lost the plot. Both adaptations of Doctor Doom have failed to realize why Doctor Doom is interesting. It's because he's a moral opposite of what the Fantastic Four as a team are. They show the power of family, and he is a character that shows the dangers of being isolated. And when you finally have a good adaptation of the Fantastic Four First Steps, what do we have for the MCU? We have Robert Downey Jr. playing him. Why? And he has no connection to Reed Richards. We're doing the same thing again. And I know at this point you might be saying, well, maybe there just isn't a way to create a Doctor Doom archetype that works with a film. And maybe that's true. Maybe it's impossible to create a villain that exists only because of the main hero, and his lack of connections with others makes him want to be loved by using terror to show that he's a better hero. And hey, what is Syndrome doing here? So yeah, this is the part of the video where I have to talk about why The Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four film. Once again, The Incredibles is a film about family. It shows each member individually who is unique, but all of them are stronger when they are bound together by their love for each other. We constantly see the 4 of them, or I guess 5 of them, saving each other constantly. The main hero is one that is cocky and through his own arrogance ended up creating a villain that despises him and lives on his own world, creating his own robot army and wanting to destroy him because of his resentment. Does this sound familiar? But The Incredibles understands the most important dynamic of the Fantastic Four. This family isn't able to overcome these incredible odds like Galactus or the fact that the universe is ending because they have superpowers, but rather because they're a family that never breaks. And the film that came closest to that was the newest one. Fantastic Four First Step is easily the best adaptation of the Fantastic Four characters. And the reason that film was able to succeed was because it understood that this team is a family and not a superhero team. And it was the first film out of all of them to realize that if you don't embrace that part of the Fantastic Four, you just aren't going to end up with a good movie. I'm not saying that making a Fantastic Four film is easy, far from it, but it's 10 times harder when you're scared of the source material and are trying to stray away from it rather than lean into it. And you can see the film that struggled the most out of all these Fantastic Four films was the one that tried its hardest to move away from what makes it special. The Fantastic Four are hard to adapt. It's definitely easier to adapt a series like the X-Men. Those characters are just dynamite and a lot easier to write. And the Fantastic Four are hard to adapt because their tone is different from any other superhero team. But also, that is what makes them so special, and dare I say, makes them maybe the most fantastic superhero team. That is so corny. I'm gonna log off, go play Lego Marvel Superheroes, fight Galactus, and then, I don't know, rewatch The Incredibles. It's way better than you think it was than when you were a kid. Oh, and go read some Jonathan Hickman, Fantastic Four, and Jack Kirby stuff. Okay, bye.